Morning. Welcome to another recorded lecture on word problem solving. In this recorded lecture, we will be talking about uniform motion and mixture related word problems. And specifically, we need to recall the formula involving rate, time, and distance. Follow nyo dapat yun doon sa asynchronous video. No? But specifically, instead of rate, of course, it talked about, or it used the term speed. But for our purpose, we can also generally use the term rate. They would mean the same thing, for our purpose, just for our purpose. Okay, because we know from the asynchronous material that speed is a kind of rate. Okay, but for our purposes, when we say rate and speed, they mean the same thing in the context of uniform motion word problems. We also construct RTD and mixture tables, and of course, answer uniform motion and mixture related problems using our RESA or RISA format. Okay? Again, bagong lahat, homework muna. And some reminders. Next week na ang ating last summative assessment. So for the Monday and Thursday classes, April 28. For the Tuesday, Friday classes, April 29. Okay, next week na yan, magsimula na mag-review. Panoorin itong mga videos na to, malaking tulong ang rewatch ng mga videos na ito. You can pause, rewind, you can even slow down the videos, no? To suit your pace. Accomplish FA 14B today and 15A no later than 8 a.m. of the next sync session. And again, kung di mo pa rin tapos ang Cerebri exercises 4.1, 4.2, 9.1, tuloy-tuloy lang. Okay? Next week na rin ang deadline ng mga yan. Right. Let's talk about your exit ticket. So, exit ticket natin para sa, that's what, 13B, no? These are possible solutions to those three problems. There should be two tables here. There you go. Two tables. Yeah. Again, remember that there are different possible variations in terms of answering word problems. And generally, that depends on how you represent your unknowns. Because remember, your equation is also dependent on the kind of representation that you make. So, if you represent a certain problem a different way, most likely your equation will also look different. Pero, kung tama naman ang sinunod mong relationships, tama yung pag-establish mo ng equation, despite the possible differences in representations or equations, dapat pare-pareho lang ng final answer ang nakukuha. Okay? For number 1 here, the area should be 567 square centimeters. In number 2, Emily is 12 and Jacob is 17. And that's not supposed to be number 1. Number 3, the father is 48 and his son is 12. Again, yan yung mga possible variations in terms of the full RESA format. Ano? Huwag kakalimutan, no? Lalo sa age word problems, napaka-importante na tayo ay nagtatabulate, no? With the time periods as headings of the columns. Dali niyang sagutan, di ba, kapag nagtabulate tayo. Okay? Now, for the key points. Remember, ang topic natin ngayon ay uniform motion and mixture-related word problems. So, medyo mahirap ang uniform motion word problems. Actually, hindi naman masyado because we rely on a very simple scientific concept, no? Yung formula ng speed or rate na napanood natin doon sa video, no? At na derive din natin doon sa ating asynchronous material yung isa pang version ng equation na yun in terms of D. Yeah, if you remember that part of the material. Now, when we do solve uniform motion word problems, usually a good way to go about it is to construct an RTD table. Now, by RTD, RT and D are the headings of your columns. R, of course, means rate, T means time, and D means distance. Yeah, and then you supply the table with information from either your representation or from the problem itself. Okay, so halimbawa yan, gawa ko ng table. Let's say sa problem sabi 40 miles per hour ang travel ang rate ni car A and 50 miles per hour si car B. And they maybe leave the same spot at the same time and what move towards each other. No? Tinatanong how long will it take maybe for them to meet. So the time of travel of A and B, yun yung tinatanong natin. Ano? That's the unknown. Let's say in that case, I represent that as X. And after that, again, recall this equation. This is the equation from the same formula for rate or speed, di ba? Sabi natin, sabi sa video, speed is equal to distance over time. But for our purpose, we instead of the word speed, ginamit natin rate. No? So R is equal to D over T. Pero remember, this kind of an equation, we encountered this in the first module. No? It's a literal equation. You have multiple variables included in your equation. R is equal to D over T. Remember, if we want to solve for D, what we can do is try to get rid of the denominator T here on the right side of the equation. So what I can do is to multiply both sides of the equation by T. Diba? Ganyan tayo eliminate ng unwanted denominators. So on the right side, T over T is 1. That's by the inverse property of multiplication, leaving us with D. And then on the other side, you have RT. Again, ito rin siya, no? Equation na to. RT is equal to D, which means to get the distance traveled by a moving object, we simply multiply its rate of travel or speed of travel times the time of travel. So, in the case of my table, again, to get the distance traveled by car A, I multiply 40 by X. Ganun yung gagawin ko for car B, no? 50 times X ako dyan. So, ito dapat ang aking entries under the distance column. Okay? And draw. Yeah, again, it doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be accurate, doesn't have to be to scale. Quick drawing would do just fine. Let's say ito yung idea. Ito pala. They're traveling pala in opposite directions halimbawa. Not towards each other. So let's say car A is moving westward, B is traveling eastward. No? And again, just arrows, okay na yan. Basta with the proper labels, yan yung importante din. No? And from, let's say again, no, you can derive the information you'll use for your labels from your RTD table. And as well as, your information provided in the problem itself. No? Tulad nito, look at my label for the green ray. No, that's the distance traveled by car A. But according to the table, the distance traveled by car A is this, 40x. Diba? Kaya siya mismo yung, dilaw pala. Yan, ginamit natin dito. Distance traveled by B, on the other hand, is 50x. But what if the problem is asking some sort of question like, after how many hours will they be 360 kilometers apart? No? Kaya kailangan yung total distance between them should also be included as a label in your drawing. So you get to visualize immediately anong mangyayari. Kasi if I judge by the drawing alone, it seems like if car A travels until this point and B travels until this point until they are 360 kilometers apart, car A will have traveled 40x kilometers already and B 50x kilometers. And note those two portions, ano? Ito hanggang dito is 40x. Ito hanggang dito is 50x. But combined, note that they sum up to 360. And that's your key, sum up to 360. And that should give you a hint in terms of setting up your equation. Ganyan yung itsura niya. Inad mo yung distance covered ni A at distance covered ni B to get the total distance between them, 360 kilometers. Of course, you solve accordingly and answer appropriately kung ano yung problem, kung ano yung tinatanong. Yeah. So that's your key, setting up your RTD table. Sample tayo. Okay, basahin ang tanong, pause the video, and then hit play kapag meron ka ng solution na attempt. Right. Okay, tignan natin, no? Two cars, 400 miles apart, travel toward each other. Pasalubong. One car travels at 48 miles per hour and the other at 32 miles per hour. In how many hours will they meet? Pwede tayo magsimula kagad ng R dito. Represent natin. Ano. Again, a good way to represent if you're still confused at this point. Sir, nahihirapan ako dyan eh. How do I begin my representation? You always ask yourself, what are the unknowns in the problem? No? In fact, the best question would be, what is being asked in the problem? And if you ask yourself that question in this particular example, ano tinatanong? What is being asked? Here, in the last sentence. In how many hours will they meet? Yun yung unknown mo. No? And typically, that unknown value is a really good candidate for what your variable will stand up for, no? Will represent, will be a placeholder for. So, kung itong tanong, in how many hours will they meet? Ganun mismo ang aking representation. Look at this. I will let X be the number of hours it will take before the cars meet. Napaka direct ng aking representation. Kasi once I determine the value of X, that will immediately lead me to answering the question in the problem. O, diba? And now, what do I do? Ngayon, bubuo tayo ng ating drawing. O, diba? Ganyan diagram niya, no? Mayroong dalawang cars traveling towards each other, kasalubong, diba? And maybe you label one ray to be one car, the other to be another. No? Say this. Notice, ginawa ko lang medyo mahaba yung orange ray for obvious reasons. Look at this, ano? Because I represented that as car A. And notice in the problem, car A travels faster. So, by common sense, no, given the same amount of time, car A will have traveled a greater distance than another vehicle that travels slower. Diba? Kaya mas maiksi. But again, it doesn't have to be like that. Doesn't matter. Because the purpose of the drawing is for you to visualize uh, how the values play out, no? How they are related. So, nagsasalubong ng ganyan, ano? And now, we set up our RTD table. Look at this. Now, ano ang alam natin under the R column? The rates. Given ba ang rate ni A, ni B? Yes, the answer is yes. 48 miles per hour ang rate ni A, 32 kay B. No? Now, lipat tayo sa next column. T column, time. Do we know the time of travel of A and B? No, we don't know that yet. But, yun yung tinatanong, how many hours will they meet? And, that is precisely what X is in our representation. It's the number of hours it will take before the cars meet. So, X and X lalagay ko dyan. Sure, bakit X and X? Kasi ang presumption natin dito, they started, kumbaga, the count, yung timer, no, started at the same time for both cars when they were 400 miles apart. Okay? So, the idea is, the amount of time A will spend traveling before it meets car B is the same amount of time for car B it will spend traveling before it meets A. Kaya pareho yung ating time of travel for both cars, X and X. No? And again, recall, RT or R times T is equal to D. So, imumultiply ko lang to 48 times X para makuha yung aking distance. No? That should be in terms of miles, of course. Now, in your science class, matututunan nyo din yan, no? Yung nagmumultiply ka ng mga units of measure. No? Miles per hour times hours. In fact, you can visualize that here. Look at this. Baka magtaka kayo, bakit naging miles bigla yun? Remember, ito, 48 miles per hour. Diba? Per hour means for every hour, divided by 1 hour. And then, actually, we can also write this as this, no? Tingnan, one way of visualizing this. 48 miles per 1 hour. Diba? Ganun din na ibig sabihin nun. 48 miles per hour is 48 miles over 1 hour. And look at this, no? Let me rewrite that here. 48 miles over 1 hour is like a fraction. And if you multiply that fraction by what? Look at this. X hours. X hours. Yung pag nag-multiply ka ng fraction, ito, kung sanay kayo, nilalagay nyo pa ng denominator yan na 1, no problem. But look at this. Don't these two units of measure cancel out? Diba? An hour over an hour is equal to 1. So, pag natanggal mo yan, what do you have? 48 miles times x is equal to 48x miles, which is exactly this. O, di ba? So, yeah, by that same principle, of course, dito 32x hours, 32x miles tayo. And notice, immediately, nilabel ko na rin yung drawing ko. The distance traveled by A is 48x miles, 32x miles naman yung travel ni B. Okay? And what else? What else do we know? Alam natin sa problem, ano? That from the point that car A started and B started, the distance between those 2 points is 400 miles. Kompleto na yung drawing ko. Now, what's the next task, sir? Try to understand. Hindi natin sabi natin, when the two cars meet, ano mangyayari? Ano magsasalubong sila? Babanggaan sila? No, that's not the important thing. Look at this. When the two cars meet, no, yung tinravel ni A at tinravel ni B individually. If you put those two together, that's actually what the illustration suggests. Those two distances should sum up to the 400-mile distance between them in the first place. Ba? O sum up. Oh, di ba parang ganito yung mga ano nyo ng grade school? Like, I think, models, line models, bar models. Yeah? This is like the part whole bar model, if you will. No, the parts are 48x and 32x. The whole is 400 miles. That should immediately lead you to writing your equation as 48x plus 32x equals 400. O, di ba? Pati yung bar models natin in grade school, no? Na gagamit natin dito. Para siyang bar model, see? It's the part whole bar model from grade school. Oh, and then, of course, we solve the equation. I leave the simplification to you, but that should lead to x equals 5. Now, bibilugan na ba kagad yan? Double check muna in how many hours will they meet. Tama naman, si x naman talaga number of hours. But of course, state it in sentence form. The cars will meet in 5 hours. Di ba? Madali lang. As long as you draw, you tabulate, and then you base off your equation from interpreting both your illustration and your table. And as well as your problem na rin. No? Easy, easy, easy. Example 2. Again, basa, pause, try it yourself, hit play when you're done. Okay, tignan natin kung tama ang nakuha. Louie and Roy start from home, presumably the same home, and travel in opposite directions. Si Louie travels twice as fast as Roy does. In 4 hours, they are 150 miles apart. Find the rate of each. Again, we can start with our representation. Tingnan natin, ano ba tinatanong? Find the rate of each. Okay, unknown ang rates of travel, yung speed ng pag-travel nila. Now, balik tayo sa other information sa problem. Look at this second sentence. Louie travels twice as fast as Roy does. So kung ano man daw ang speed, ang rate of travel ni Roy, doble nun ang rate of travel ni Louie. So there are two ways to do this. You can either let x be Roy's rate and then double that 2x to get Louie's rate, or pwede rin naman, you let x be Louie's rate and half of that, 1/2 x, be Roy's rate. Now, I know, I personally, I'd rather go with the x and 2x representation, so I'll do just that. No? I'll let x be Roy's rate, 2x be Louie's. Kasi twice as fast nga eh. No? Si Louie compared to Roy. Again, let's draw. So that's the home, that point. They travel in opposite directions. Again, doesn't have to be pretty, my drawing. And then let's label. Si Roy yung mas mabagal eh. So I drew a shorter ray for Roy. Okay? Again, hindi naman super importante yung scaling. But, it's also good that you try and approximate. So next, we build our RTD table. Let's start with the first column, R. What do we know? Do we know their rates? No. That's what we're looking for. But, meron tayong representation ng kanilang rates. X kay Roy, 2x kay Louie. Dilagay ako dyan, 2x miles per hour. Miles per hour naman ano kasi miles ang distance, hours ang time, so it's only logical to state it in mph. X miles per hour tayo kay Roy. How about their time of travel? Meron ba tayong alam dyan? Yes. Looking at the problem, it says in 4 hours. Oh, 4 oras ang kanilang travel. Ibig sabihin, tig 4 sila dyan. 4 hours ang travel ni Louis, 4 hours din si Roy. Now, how about their distances traveled? Remember, R times T is equal to D. Pinakita rin natin kanina kung paano nagsisimplify yung unit of measure. So, not so, parang ano tayo, skip na natin yung part na yun. I should get 4 times 2x miles. Oh, why is this x? This is supposed to be 2x. No? 4 times 2x miles. And then you have, for the other, 4 times x miles. Baliktad lang pala. Si Louie pala yung nasa kabila. So, tama din naman. Okay? And Roy, 4 times x. Again, let's interpret. Ano pa yung alam natin sa problem? Sabi, they are 150 miles apart. So, dapat meron din akong ganitong part ng aking drawing. Di ba? After 4 hours, yung tinravel ni Roy in one direction plus yung tinravel ni Louie in the other direction. No? Ang total ay 150 miles. And that, again, should lead us to setting up our equation. Yeah? That should be 4 times x plus 4 times 2x is equal to 150. Okay? Again, ito mabilis na dapat kayo sa part na to. X should be 12.5. 12.5, pwede ba yun, sir? 12? Okay lang naman, no problem. Pwede naman eh. Hindi naman whole numbers lang ang pwede sa rate. Ano ba tinatanong? Find the rate of each. Do we encircle this as a final answer? No. Back to the representation. Nakuha ko na yung x. Rate yan ni Roy. Tinatanong, find the rate of each. So, kailangan ko rin kunin yung rate ni Louie. Kailangan ko kunin yung 2x na 25. Yeah? Now, I state my final answer. Sabihin ko na, si Roy traveled at 12.5 miles per hour, pero si Louie at 25 miles per hour. O, diba? Makes perfect sense. Dali lang, diba? So, again, natutulungan tayo ng drawing, ng table, at pag-interpret nung dalawang yon alongside the information given in the problem to set up our equation. Very, very easy. Last. Pause muna. Basa. Pause. Try it for yourself. And then hit play when you're done. Okay. Meron na kayo na-try dapat. Tingnan natin to, ha? Ano alam natin? Ano tinatanong sa atin? Si Train A daw, traveling at 30 miles per hour, sinundan after 2 hours from the same station ni Train B. So may naunang umalis. Hindi katulad ng dalawang problems na nauna, no? They both left at the same time. Pero this time, this problem, one left earlier by 2 hours than the other. Okay. Train B traveling at 50 miles per hour. How many hours daw after Train B leaves will it overtake? Hahabulin niya si Train A. First thing maybe we ask ourselves, is it possible? Will Train B ever overtake Train A? I mean, try imagining muna. Look at Train A. It's traveling at 30 miles per hour. And B is traveling at 50 miles per hour. But, left the same station 2 hours later. Mukhang pwede naman, ano? Kasi mas mabilis mo mag-travel si B. So, although may head start na 2 hours si Train A, ko-compensate yun ni B in terms of its rate of travel. Mas mabilis siyang babiyahe. Maabutan niya yan, malamang. Ako feeling ko maabutan niya yan. But let's show that algebraically. Let's start with my representation. Again, sir, hindi ko alam saan mag-represent eh. Balik sa problem. Tingnan mo kung ano yung tinatanong kasi usually yun yung susi. Kung hindi man yun directly, look at where that particular unknown value is dependent on. Okay? Natingnan to, how many hours after Train B leaves will it overtake A? Do yung tinatanong sa atin? But is that really dependent on anything else? Parang hindi naman. So in this particular case, ito mismong hinahanap ang aking ire-represent. I will let X be the time of travel of Train B before it overtakes Train A. But there is a bit of a new thing here. Look at this. Parang iba, sir, Ba't may X plus 2? Yun yung time of travel, sabi mo ni A. Again, no? We know that Train A had a head start of 2 hours. So, imagine this. Ang tinatanong sa atin how many hours after Train B leaves will it overtake A? Now, let's say, for example lang that it will take 10 hours 10 hours for train B to do the overtaking. But remember, train A had a 2-hour head start. So if train B had traveled 10 hours before overtaking A, then in turn, train A will have traveled 10 plus 2 hours, no? Before it is overtaken. Kasi the head start, we add on top of the time of travel of the vehicle, or in this case, the train, that does the catching up. Kaya mas maraming oras in-spend si train A traveling. No? It had a 2-hour head start. Kaya X plus 2 ang kanyang time of travel. Gets? O pag hindi, medyo balikan yon or consult your teacher kung naguluhan ka dun ha. Pero dapat, mas malaki ang time of travel ni A. Siya yung hinabol eh. Siya yung nauna. Diba? So it had a 2-hour head start ahead of train B. Again, now we draw. Look at this, no? O, si train A tumatakbo. After 2 hours, boom, ayun si B. Hanggang nagpang-abot. Ulitin natin yung drawing na yun ha. Hindi sila sabay nag-travel eh. Nauna si A, and then at some point, ka-catch up yun si B hanggang mag-overtake sila. See? Again, ano, by just by that drawing, animated race, we know that A had more time to travel than B. Okay? Again, RTD table tayo. What do we know about their rates? Alam ba natin? Yes, given sila. Si train A, 30 miles per hour, 50 naman kay B. Under the T column, do we know their times of travel? Yes, yun yung nasa representation natin. Di ba? X plus 2 hours and X hours, respectively. How about their distances covered? Sanay na tayo dyan. We multiply R times T. And that should be in miles. Yan na, label ko na kay A. No? 30 times the quantity X plus 2, and then 50 times X kay B. O yan no, ngayon, sir, paano equation natin? Wala naman total distance, sir. Kanina may total distance eh. Yeah, but do you think that matters for this question? Tignan yung dalawang rays. What can you say about them? Imagine ang distance na tinravel ni A from the station to the point that it is overtaken. Compare that distance to the distance traveled by train B from the station to the point where it overtakes A. What can you say about those two distances? Correct. Dapat pareho. Kaya nga, i-overtake eh. Di ba? After X hours of leaving the station, dapat si train B, na overtake niya si A. Ang ibig sabihin nun, ano? They have traveled the same distance. The same distance implies what? The same distance. Uy, ang distance daw na travel ni A at that point is the same as the distance traveled by B. What does that imply? Very good. That implies that those two expressions are equal. 30 times the quantity x plus 2 is equal to 50 times x or 50x. And that is our equation. O, diba? Nasa interpretation yan, no problem. Now, of course, leave the simplification to you. You should get x equals 3. So, 3 hours. Tama, diba? After 3 hours, yan, of leaving the station, train B will overtake train A. Again, you can test that. Imagine, ano, if, so ang time of travel ni B ay 3 hours lang. If it's traveling at 50 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour for 3 hours, that's 150 miles of distance. But look at A. 30 miles, mabagal siya eh. 30 miles per hour lang. Pero how long did it travel? Di ba 3 plus 2? 5 hours? So 30 miles per hour for 5 hours. That's also 150 miles. O, diba? Magpapang-abot talaga sila. Because they would have traveled the same distance already. Okay? Oh, nice, diba? Next type. Oh, ano ba yung key points naman, sir, pag mixture-related? No? Usually, ang mixture-related problems natin, may money, no? May mga different denominations, meaning types of money, types of bills, or types of coins. So, the key thing here is to tabulate. No? Mixture tables, katulad na nakita nyo doon sa PowerPoint in the asynchronous material. And then, first we ask ourselves, ano ba yung mga hinahalo natin dito? Okay? Maybe they're coins, like 10 peso and 5 peso coins. That's a mixture. Remember the tawag dito, the specifics about mixtures that we talked about in the asynchronous material. Ano? These kinds of mixtures we're talking about are heterogeneous. Ibig sabihin, pag pinaghalo mo yung tens and fives, you can still distinguish between the tens and fives. Hindi sila nagiging bagong coin. No, that does not happen. And then the quantity of each object under A column. Say there are 5 tens and 7 fives. Sabi ng problem. Then the value. Each object has a specific value. Ano yung halaga niya? Ano ang halaga ng 10 peso coin? O, iti 10. Eh yung 5, iti 5. Diba? Again, that depends from question to question. And then the total amount of each object. Pag yung total amount, remember, in the synchronous material, what we do is we multiply the quantity by the value. Parang ano lang yan eh, meron kang 5 piraso na 20 peso bills. Don't you have 100 pesos? Because that's 20 times 5. So parang ganito rin yan. No, the amount is quantity times the value. And then most likely the problem will also, or sometimes no, the problem also talks about a total amount of your mixture. So ilagay mo rin sa ilalim kung meron. And we get that, of course, by adding the amount, total amount of one type of object in the mixture and add that to the amount of the other type of object in the mixture. O, diba? Ganyan lang. Napakasimple. And then, of course, you set up your equation as necessary. Okay? Now, let's see some examples. Basa. Pause video. Sagot. Then hit play when you're done. Okay. Here we see Mike having more, 3 more rather. 20 peso bills as 50 bills. If he has 900 pesos in all, how much of each denomination, o yung term na yun, denomination, yun yung klase ng pera. In this case, we're talking about bills. So, what kind of bill? Yeah? O, ito, gawa tayo ng table. Ano yung alam natin dito? We're talking about 20 peso bills and 50 peso bills. O, yun yung objects na hinahalo natin. Now, what else do we know? Wala pa. So, mag-represent muna tayo. Ano ba tinatanong, sir? How many of each denomination does he have? Uy, balik sa relationship dito. Mike has 3 more 20 peso bills as 50 bills. Uy, 3 more. Mas marami ng 3. So, ang representation ko ganito. O, di ba? X and X minus 3. Oh, now we can supply our table with other values. Quantity-wise, we have X and X minus 3. We have for value 20 and 50. Then we have for the amount. O, diba? Multiply mo lang. Then what does it say in the problem? Total amount daw is 900. Oh. Again, we demonstrated in the previous slide, no? The total amount is obtained by adding the individual amounts of the individual types. Oh, so that will be my equation. Oh, diba? Andali. And now, I leave the simplification to you. You should get x equals 15. And x minus 3 is 12. Yeah? So my final answer is there are 15 20 peso bills and 12 50 peso bills. Next. Pause, basa, try, hit play when you're done. Yeah, Felix has 400 in 5s, 10s, and 20s. Yan. The number of 5s is twice the number of 10s. And the number of 20s is 6 less than the number of 10s. How many 20s? These are coins does he have? Okay? Dapat ang iyong table, of course, will include the 5s, 10s, and 20s. But instead of quantities, dito tayo magre-represent. Look at this. The number of 5s is twice the number of 10s. So, yung number of 5s dependent sa number of 10s. And the number of 20s is 6 less than the number of 10s. Again, number of 20s is dependent on the number of 10s. So, maganda na ang ating variable will represent that. No? 10 is the number of tens is the basis for both fives and 20s. So I will let x be the number of tens. Kasi doon nakabase yung number of 5 peso coins at yung 20 peso coins. O sabi, number of fives daw is twice the number of tens. O di 2x tayo kay fives. And then what does it say about the 20s? 6 less than the number of tens. Oh, sino ba yung tens? X. What's 6 less than x? Di x minus 6 ka. Yeah? O, di meron na tayong lalagay sa quantities. Alam naman natin yung value ng bawat coin. Si 10 pesos, syempre, 10. 5, 20. O, di ba? Again, amount. Magkano per type of denomination? Ay, di multiply natin. Quantity times value. You have 10 times x here, 5 times 2x there, 20 times the quantity x minus 6 in the last cell. And of course, tingin sa problem ulit, meron ba tayong total amount dito? Yun, meron. 400 daw, sir. Lagay ko yan. 400. And these individual total amounts should all add up to my 400 peso sum. That is my equation. Diba? And if I solve that equation, I end up with 13. Bibilugan ko na ba yan? Yan ang final answer? No, look at the question. How many 20 peso coins does he have? X ba? Yung representation, ni-represent natin as 20s? No. It's x minus 6. So you look for x minus 6. 13 minus 6 is 7. So meron daw palang 7 na 20 peso coins. Diba? Nice. Last. Okay. Basa, pause, sagot, and then hit play when you're done. Right. Tapos ka na dapat. Sabi dito, hindi na pera to, sir. At hindi na barya. There are tickets. 976 of them sold by the Children's Theater at two prices, 5 pesos and 10 pesos. The total receipt is 5,630 pesos. How many of each type of ticket were sold? O, diba? Ano pa natin gawin una? Table pa rin. Mixture pa din yan eh. Mixture ng tickets. Ano ba yung mga klase ng ticket meron tayo? Meron tayong ticket na 5s. Meron tayong 10s. O quantity-wise, meron bang given? Tig-ilan? Hindi pa natin alam. But we know that the theater sold 976 in all. In other words, the number of 5 peso tickets and the number of 10 peso tickets sum up to 976. Edi yung representation ko. I will let X be the number of 5 peso tickets halimbawa. Eh, paano yung isa, sir? I don't know yet, but I know that if I put those two together, the number of each type, I end up with 976. So it's like the examples in previous PowerPoints, previous lessons. The sum of two numbers is given, di ba? I let one be X and the other be the total minus X. Diba? The sum of two numbers to be my 50 peso. O bakit 50 peso bills ito? That should be 10 peso tickets. Typo, sorry. Okay, quantity wise. Alam na natin, X and 976 minus X. Value wise, alam ko 5 and 10 yan. Diba? Yung value ng ticket 5 pesos, 10 pesos. And then again, the amount per type. Multiply lang natin, X times 5. And then 10 times 976 minus X. Okay? Alam ba natin ang total amount daw? Yes, the total receipt is 5,630 pesos. That's my total right there. O, diba? Again, individual amounts will sum up to 5,630. My equation, therefore, is this. Super easy. 5x plus 10 times the quantity 976 minus x equals 5,630. Solving that gives us 826 for x, meaning the number of fives. There were 826 tickets sold. And you also need the other. So 976 minus 826 should give us 150. Therefore, the theater sold 826 5 peso tickets and 150 10 peso tickets. Okay? Dali lang, di ba? So again, go back to your video, no? Pause, rewind if needed, And then, sasagutin natin ang ating exit ticket. Full resa ha. Much like 13B, but only two problems here. Involving two planes. And then for number 2, that's a mixture problem. Okay, Hank. Okay? Mag-consult. Rewatch this video as many times as you need to. Consult your teacher. Look at your notes. And yeah, enjoy learning this lesson. Thank you.